So, you saw
The orb.
and wanted to know how. And you also wanted to know how to use Blender in general. Well, I'll try and explain. For those of you who didn't know, you can get Blender in one of a couple different ways, 3 of which I will show you now. One option is to just type Blender or Blender 3D or something like that into your search engine of choice and go to blender.org. You can then hit download. I'm not going to do it because I already have Blender. Do it one of the other methods we're about to cover and that'll mess it up, but yeah. Just click the download, then do the download file installation. Pretty easy. You can go into the, if you're using Windows that is, you can go into the Microsoft Store, type in Blender, and get it this way. Again, really easy. And if you do it this way, it should probably handle all the startup installation stuff for you as well. And finally, the way I did it is you can also get it off of Steam, just like you would any other game. You can just go down here and get it. Super easy. I've apparently done this for over 1,000 hours. But once you get Blender and open it up, you'll see this. This is your basic default scene. And to move around it like I'm doing it now, all you have to do is click down on your mouse wheel, and then you can scroll around the scene. If you just click on the scene, you have your drag selection box. Clicking on an object obviously selects that object. You've got your default cube here, you've got your basic area light, and you've got your basic camera setup. If you want, you could tap this button to see what your camera sees. If you press this button right here, and you move the screen around, you're moving your camera as you move your screen around. Let's uncheck that. And now, I must tell you the ritual all who use Blender must do. The sacred rite. You press A to select everything in your scene. You right click, and you hit delete. And banish the default cube into nothingness. Then, you go over here to add, you select mesh, and you select cube, and you put the default cube back. This is the sacred action that all who use Blender must do. Well, depending on what you're doing, you don't actually have to put the default cube back. Instead of the cube, you might want, say, a sphere. Maybe instead of a sphere, you want a cylinder, or a torus, or a cone, or a torus, or any other object. But you always delete the default cube, even if you're going to add in another cube. It's just what you do. I'll very quickly add in another cube to briefly, go over the controls of how to move and animate stuff. Once you have your cube in and selected, to move it, you press G to grab, and you can move it around. Control Z to undo it. You can hit grab and hold down on your mouse wheel to slide it on one of the 4 axis, or 3 axis rather. You can slide it on the X axis, on the Y, or on the Z. You can also hit G and then the axis you want to move it on, in this case X, to move it on that one. You can hit R to rotate the object around, and as before, you can also rotate it on a specific axis by hitting R and then X. But for both grabbing to move and R to rotate, you can rotate it in a random orientation and then hit G, X, and then hit X again to move it on the object's orientation, or R, X, X again to rotate it on the object's orientation. If you want to make your object bigger and smaller, you can select it and hit S to scale. You can hit S and then X or Y and Z, or X or Y, Z, to scale it on that specific axis. So S, Y, scale it on the Y, S, Z, scale it on the Z. And that's the very basics of how to move and pose stuff, make them bigger, smaller, rotate them, etc. To animate an object, to have it move around your environment, if it's not an armature object, which is a whole other thing, you just need to select your object, have your timeline here, And we'll start on frame 1 of the timeline. Insert a keyframe. Move to, say, frame 50. Hit G. Hit R. And insert the keyframe again. And now, Blender will fill in the gaps between one and the other and move it accordingly. Then say at frame 70 you want it to move over here and rotate this way. You can. Maybe twist it a little bit. And then on frame 100, you want to have it be in the original spot. So you can click the first keyframe, press Shift and D to duplicate it and drag it to there. And it now moves as you had it move. Pretty simple. Shift D also works on objects themselves, but if the object you duplicate has keyframes, when those keyframes play, that object will be put into the same spot. So now both cubes are overlapping each other. So let's get rid of one of the cubes, get rid of the other cube because we don't need it. To make an object, change how it looks, you can go and select your object, go into edit mode, and adjust it with a number of things. You can just grab these points, which are called vertexes, or you could go into this, click this, and you're now in edge select mode, so you could grab your edges, or rotate them, or scale them, as before with the object. And you can do the same thing with faces, which is this. This is face select. In any of the modes, but it's best to be used in face select, you can hit E to extrude. And of course you can then do everything you could originally to it. Make it bigger or smaller, what have you. And that is the basics of how to model stuff, really. You take your base object, whatever's closest to what you want to make, and E to extrude, S to scale, or R to rotate. G to grab, pose it however you want, keep going like that. Ta-da. Don't know what that was, just demonstrating how to move stuff around. Obviously that was pretty rough and didn't really look like anything, but it's just give you guys the basic idea of how to change an object's rough appearance. Now let's go back into face select, and let's turn this into a really rough sword just as an example. We can hit E, shrink that in a little, bring it up, click this and this, E, scale them out, E to extrude that up, E to extrude that up, S to shrink it, pull it back like this, E to extrude it downward. Then we can select these faces, hit E to extrude, scale them on the Z a little bit, grab them, pull them up, then scale them down on the Y. Really rough, really janky knife, just to illustrate the idea of how to model stuff. Now obviously there's a lot more that goes into modeling in general, but that gives you a rough idea of the controls of how to do stuff. There are a lot of other tutorials out there of how to actually model things in depth, and in a good chunk of my long-form videos I run through what I'm doing in them, at least somewhat. But for making the orb, you don't really need to actually model anything. You just need to have a basic idea of the controls. Because the orb is just an orb. A basic UV sphere. Shaded smooth and subdivided. Where all of its goopiness comes from is the texturing. But before we get to that texture, which to do the texturing, you just go up into the shading tab, and then you add in your material by coming to here and clicking new. And for the orb, if I remember correctly, it was essentially just a dark bluish black material with 0 roughness. Let's take it down a little darker. And then it had a displacement node, so pull out from displacement, select displacement. And that displacement node was fed by a Vortellini node. This Vortellini texture here. Just plug that into here. And then a color ramp in between it to control it better. Flip it. Let's actually up the roughness just for a second so I can see what I'm doing. Put it like this, do about like so. Actually, we just take this and lower it a little. Yeah, that's about right. Then we drop that roughness down again. And then we add on the Vortellini node, we change it from 3D here to 4D. And then we just, for the setting here, we actually need to do another thing first so we know how long it is. But essentially, we just set a keyframe here by pressing I. And then at the end of the scene, we take it forward however much and put another keyframe in. For this scene, we'll just go to the end for the moment as the example. Go into shading, scale it by about this much, say 12, put in a keyframe, and it does that. Now obviously the speed it does that is way too high, but it was just as an example. So we select it, get rid of that other keyframe, and we'll leave the initial keyframe in shading at the 0. And now, to put it into the real world, you're going to click this little plus up here, go to VFX, and put in the one called motion tracking. And you're also going to put the thing, go video editing, and from here, you're going to need some actual footage you filmed on your camera or what have you. In this case, we'll use the tree stump that I normally do my spray painting on. Then you'll get that footage into Blender by clicking on this, hitting open, and grabbing the footage from your file system. And with it in Blender, and specifically in the motion tracking area, you want to say set scene frame, which will make the length of your scene the same as the length of your thing. Hit prefetch to help smooth over any issues. And then in your layout, real quick, we want to go Y, add camera. And you want to do this, you want to have your camera in first, and you want to pull it back out about kind of this words, pointing at your center cursor, because if you put the camera in later, it can mess up. Then we go back into motion tracking, and we say detect features. And this, as you see, puts a bunch of little markers everywhere. We click this, which says track forward, and it goes as far as it can, which in this case is the end of the thing. Then we do it again, and track backwards. Then we skip random amount of frames forward, detect features, track all the way forward, track all the way back. Frame 50, detect features, do it again, and we just keep doing this until it feels like we have an appropriately massive amount of features detected. The more the better. Because hopefully, by the time you're done, at least a good chunk of them will be tracked throughout the entirety of the thing. Or at the very least, the majority of your film. And that should probably be good. Now, in where it says solve, where it says cleanup, we're going to hit filter, click this and set it to 10, and then hit delete. Now we're going to set this probably from about, let's say 30 to 90 and then we're gonna see, because from frame 30 to frame 90 most of them are, we have at least a couple of them still active, and it should work. And we will hit solve camera motion. Solve error is 1.40. It's not great, so we're going to do see, let's detect features, scan forward, scan back, and do this a couple more times. Detect features, track forward, track back, detect features, forward, back, detect features, forward, back, detect features, forward, back. Go back to solve, go back to filter, 10, delete. Now let's try and solve the camera again. It's actually a little worse now. Okay, we'll try clean tracks, projection error, let's say 0.1. Delete, that's everything. Undo it. Okay, let's just do the filter tracks again. Do 5 rather, delete tracks. And only a couple are tracked throughout the entire thing. Okay. We will go here, detect features, and we just gotta keep doing this again and again until we finagle it to where we have a solve error of at least just straight 1, preferably under that. Let's try and clean it up again. Filter tracks. Filter. Let's do it by 10. Delete. We want it to be able to track the whole way for at least a couple of them. That might work. Let's try and solve. You know what? For this, I will take the 1.08. Again, you want to shoot for having that solve error be as low as possible, but this works for the moment. Now, in scene setup, we're going to hit set as background and set up tracking scene. Now, let's zoom into about right here. This one, and let's try this one and set them as floor. And if we go to the start, and if we go into rendered view, layout, camera, rendered view, and shrink this down, GZ, put it about right there, like so. Let's see, does that look like it is hovering over the stump? Yes, it does, and it's even not super jittery. Alright, that was surprisingly painless this time. Now, what we need to do is we need to replace this plane that it generates by default, get rid of it, and we now need to add a new plane in, scale it to about the same size for the sake of ease. And we need to set up a very specific type of shader on this plane. So back into shading, new, and we're going to delete this principled, or dissolve, either way, just the same thing. And now to make sure it's actually working, we need to add in a sunlight, light, sun, put it up, go into rendered view camera, and actually we will hide this by pressing H for a second. Why is my rendered view not showing it? In motion tracking? What? Oh, right. So I believe it is in scene, then film, enable transparent. That fixed it. Okay. Now in layout, render, camera. Alright. We want to have our, let's add one more plane in just to see for the moment. And we want to kind of match, bring it down a little, just use it to kind of match our shadows. So we want to align our sun about like this, but a little less. See, the lighting is about We'll line up our shadow. Z. Just rotate a little bit till the shadow looks correct. Roughly in the right spot. That should just about work like that. We'll get rid of it. Press Alt-H to unhide our plane. And then we'll go back into shading. And now we want to add from the surface a diffuse principled shader, shader to RGB, mix shader, put this into the factor of it, and then we want another diffuse, so we'll just Shift D it, and a transparent. This will be our shadow catching plane. If we set this diffuse... Oh, I remember what I did wrong now. Okay. Apologies, because this is kind of convoluted and I'm still learning it myself. What I am missing is that for this, I need to go to the materials property here and change it from rendered dithered to rendered blended. And you saw the flicker there for just a second. I think if my computer doesn't just crash for no reason. There we go. For some reason that shadow is light when it shouldn't be. I mean, if we flip this, does it? Okay, this all the way down. Or what? Why? There we go. Okay. So, to get this to work properly, we need the diffuse to the shader to the factor of this diffuse at the top, the transparent at the bottom into the surface, and it needs to be rendered method blended. Now, if I play with this a little, bring that up, bring the color of that up, about like so, and then if I select my scene here, I believe it is the setting I need, shadows, we want render, shadows, and then we want to lower, no, okay, we want to enable ray tracing. Why are you fighting me? Slide this back just a little softer, I guess. It's not how I did it last time, but it does not want to cooperate. Alright. We will have our shadow resolution down lower so it's a little fuzzier. It's not probably the right way you're supposed to do this, but it's how I figured out how to make it work at the moment. Our shadow catcher is now working. And so the final step is to go into shading, which we are in, but not object shading, but world shading. Then we need to add in a texture, specifically a environment texture, and then open up something called an HDRI file. To get an HDRI file, the easiest way is to go to this website called Polyhaven, which has a lot of assets for Blender completely free, including HDRIs. So you browse your HDRIs, you find one, and then you need to find one that looks, let me hide this, you need to find an HDRI that looks close to your environment. Now I already have one, but I was just showing you where I got it. So you open up the HDRI you get into the environment texture, and then plug that into your background, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that the sphere looks a little different. And that is because what the HDRI does is make the reflections in your reflected objects look like the HDRI environment. And now if we go into the sphere and go into object shading, let's actually reduce its roughness just a little. Something like that. Let it zoom in a bit. Lower the roughness a bit. And then let's up the scale a bit. There we go. Now, why is my shader not doing its thing all of a sudden? It was just working. Why did this stop having the shadow? Shading. This just worked. Why did it stop? The HDRI too strong? The HDRI was too strong. Do this. I do like so, and then I drop the color of it. There we go. Just had to adjust it a little bit. Okay. And now we have our shadow. And now we have the orb floating above the stump. And like I said earlier, to have it swirling and pulsating in on itself, we just have the keyframe at the start, go into shading for the orb, and then we go to layout, the last frame, shading, and we can just put this at like, say, 5, insert keyframe, and let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that works. Kind of. We go to layout, interpolation, linear to make it a completely straight thing. Actually, I think we need to do less than 5. Let's just do 3. Inserts, layout, select everything, interpolation, linear. And that is how we do this. Now, one last thing to do before we end it. If you come over to here, output, you need to change a few settings here before you do the last thing you gotta do. So, you want to change this from PNG to this video, and then you want to open this and select where you want your video file to be outputted to. And then once you do that, you come up here, you hit render, and then render animation. But for now, I'll just hit render image so we can check the still image just to make sure everything looks right. And it does. Okay. Now that that's set up to do it properly, we just go render animation, and then wait a couple hours or minutes. Never know how fast it's going to process. This time, it looks like it's actually doing it pretty quickly.